When you're playing a character in a role-playing game, how much do you prepare before the game? Welcome to my channel. I focus on tabletop role-playing games, video games, and science fiction. This is sort of a video response, probably going in a very different direction than was mentioned by Ivan in the RPG Brigade. But let's talk about how do you prepare for a game. Now, if I'm playing in person, one of the things I like to do to prepare is I prepare a veggie plate. Now, let me talk about food, things like that. For most of my life, I've been on, shall we say, a non-mainstream diet. Let's just put it that way. I can eat anything I want to. It's not always healthy for me. So, and I often do like a slightly different variety than what you normally end up at your parties for, a game. I don't bring the chips and things like that. I tend to bring a veggie plate, and my veggie plate is a little different than most people's veggie plate because I like cucumbers. I love mushrooms, and particularly mushrooms with blue cheese, things like that. Those are great. I also like radishes in there. I'm not a great fan of your average celery stick, though I will put celery sticks on there. And carrots, I'm, shall we say, fussy. I don't like when you go to the grocery store and buy the carrots, the quote, the baby carrots in the package. To me, they don't have any flavor. They don't taste like adult, mature carrots. So if I'm going to have carrots, I buy adult carrots or mature carrots and skin them and dice them up, and put them in the carrot sticks, because that to me has a better flavor than the little carrots. So I'm always a little strange with that. The other one that I always like to do is I like to bring a bunch of cheese, and I will do the Swiss cheese is always great, and you can have some other kinds, but of cheese, Munster and so on, and dice that up and put that on a plate with opposite the veggies, so you have cheese and veggies. And the other one I'll do lunch meats like salami and even ham and things like that. If you haven't guessed, I tend to go toward a little bit of a low-carb diet, but that's what I've been on for many, many years, and I like that. And and very few people really complain about it because don't think I've ever had anybody complain if I bring that. And it tends to get eaten. Just people don't think about that when you game. But that's me. I tend to do things a little bit different. I admit that I'm not in the mainstream because I'm picky about the kind of vegetables. I will eat the normal veggie plate, but I prefer that I actually do prefer that to the chips, though don't get me wrong. There are times when I want chips and salsa and so on. So that's one form of prep. Another form of prep I've done, which is, shall we say, a bit more nefarious, and I'll just put the link down and I'll give a quick overview. When I'm playing, I have no problem spending quite a bit of time preparing and doing post-game wrap-up. When I was running World of Tiglath, when we started, in fact, on my World of Tiglath group on Google Plus, that we would do icy chats, in character sort of chat. That was one of the things that we did, and you'd write up after the game, and some of the characters would write up how they felt after the game and so on. And there's some interesting ones there. I actually had the opportunity to write up a quote, an in-character chat of how one of the non-player characters reacted to the scenario. And that's when I was running as a game. But the one that was probably the most elaborate, and I'll mention this, there's a link into it, and it was called Revenge is a Dish Best Served Cold. And for this one, I'll let you go watch that. I really enjoyed making that video quite a while ago, but it was a story that there were a lot of ins and outs of that. But for me as a player, I ended up drawing an entire map we were going to go out on an adventure, and I, as a fairly high level character, had a bunch of followers, and I remember I took a bag of gems, and yes, I fairly rich character, and gave it to my followers. I had actually a company of military company organized. I had captains, lieutenants, and all the officers, and yes, and I had them build things in preparation for, and I plotted out what they would build depending upon how long we would be gone, because we were going through a portal into another world and doing various things. And when we would return, this was all plans for when we would return. Yes, I chuckle. That was yes. The end of it all was a total party kill, including me. I didn't intend to die, but all my henchmen killed everyone. It's a fun story, and I'll let you explain that. So yes, I've done a total party kill as a player character. So what happens is that I have to chuckle at that, but that's the kind of preparation you can put into it. You can learn your spells, you can do various things, but it's often more fun to think about. As your character gets higher up, you've got a little bit of gold. So it's always useful to figure, it's money sitting under a mattress is just money sitting under a mattress. I believe you should put that money to work. What's the parable in the New Testament about the Lord? That Lord gives the parable about the servants. The one servant is given a talent of gold, and another servant is given 5 talents of gold, and the third one is given 10 talents of gold. And the first one, that one with 10, comes back and he has an increase of 10 talents. So he's doubled the investment, and the Lord, well done. And that one, and the second one does 5. He does 5 talents, but the one who only got 1 talent, he was very worried and said that you were a difficult master, and so I went and buried the talent and put it. And the description in the New Testament actually says that you should put the money to work, because that's what they did. And as a player character, I think you should put your money to work. So what happens is that, if you're a relatively high level character, you can pay for someone, a butler basically, or a manservant or a womanservant or whatever, to make sure you're always at your best. It's like an orderly in the military, that they shine your shoes, they polish your armor, they make sure your clothing is up to date, is perfectly clean and well maintained. And you take that money, and while you're out adventuring, you do things. What happens is you say, oh, I want to build this, or I want to buy this. And what happens is you give your money to your player NPCs that you've associated with, that you've hired to keep track of your estate, because as you start getting higher up, you're going to have more and more money. Even if you're a paladin, think about a paladin. A paladin is going to have maybe he has a war horse, yes, but you still have to have some place to, shall we say, hang your hat. Maybe very modest, but what happens is that you still have someone to really come in and clean up, to empty the chamber pots, shall we say, or do you just have somebody to come by and dust, and cleaning lady come by, I hate to say that, or a cleaning man if you want to be that way, come by and clean up your stuff? Or are you truly ascetic, and if you're playing a paladin of that? But that's a very special kind of character, and the DM could force you to be like that. But if you're the other kind of character, you could have, any other class, you have some sort of possessions. You could say, oh, I want a custom sword made for me, and I want it made this way, and then we're going to get it enchanted and so on, and you can spend the money on it, and you want to, or I've got 5 magical swords, and I want this one engraved and gold filigree and everything else like that, and you can have that sent off and spent. And so things go on while you're out adventuring, and so on. And if you're you say you have, if you're like I did the one about the orc, and so if your orc was busy trying to reproduce throughout there, as you come back, things could have been growing, and you can come back and see what kind, what you know, sowing your wild oats, see if any of those have sprouted, and you now have things like that. But those things can happen, and what do you do about that? Or you quote a deadbeat dad. Okay, here's the fun one. You've got your orc character who's or a half orc, either one, going out, and that they have a very strong reproductive urge, is the way it's described in the monster manual. And you have spread your seed far and wide, and you come back, and now are you a deadbeat dad, or do you have to spend your money to take care of all these children that you have? So you can have some fun, interesting things like that. But in essence, as your characters grow, are they just one-sided? Are they only adventurers? Or what do they do with all the gold that they acquire? Now, I've also mentioned that I'm from very old school. I started where in original Dungeons and Dragons and the 3 little brown books, and with generally 4 because you added Greyhawk at least, but you got 1 experience point per gold piece. That was the other thing that you achieved. And in fact, the way for accumulating a magic item in original Dungeons and Dragons, you would get, took the gold piece value of the magic item, and that was the experience points that were given for acquiring that magic item. So you ended up with, tend to have a lot of money, and there was this whole argument that you didn't get the experience points until you actually spent the money. That was an interesting, subtle house rule that many people implemented. So if you have to spend your money, what happens to that money? You know, is it just out carousing and having a good time? Or did you buy a house, and did you have servants and so on? You can start doing that. I mean, if you played Skyrim, where you see you buy or build a house and you keep adding on things to it. So that's the thing that you can do as a player character. And you can outline what your character or what your character's fortune is doing while you're not gaming, which is a different thing. And that can take you a little bit of time to think about. What do you want to do with it? What do you want to plan? You can write that up. So yeah, you can learn your spells, but that's just learning the game. And if you're an experienced player, you know, after a period of time, you know what spells your character has, if they have spells. Or if you're like me, I tend to play a fighter, a tank type, so you just know what capabilities they have, and you know your magic items and your armor and your things like that. If you're a fighter and not a paladin, you may have a whole bunch of horses. Why would you have just one? You'd want multiple horses. You want war horses. You could actually start, you know, build your own stud farm. Let's be honest, it's because you would have multiple horses and you'd want to have the best. And so you would buy them and breed them, because horses don't live as long as humans. And so you would need multiple, and they, you know, and after a period of time, you'd want to move on to a younger horse, particularly, you know, as they get older. And so what happens is you would have all of that goes on with your character, and it goes on with your character's fortune. So when I say game, when it's how much do you prepare for as a player, you need to plan what's happening to your character's fortune. Is it just sitting in a bank, maybe gaining interest, or are you doing investing it? So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. How do you prepare? What do you prepare for your games? Do you spend much time building things, planning what your character's fortune is going to do, and so on? Or is your character just solely one-sided and focusing on adventure? So thank you for watching my video. I look forward to learning what you think about this video. Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate all your comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give me a thumbs down. I appreciate both forms of feedback. If you're new here and would like to subscribe, you can click on the icon on the left. If you're interested, there's more content on the right.